Is it possible to have 4 picks of the week? Like, can I do that? Is that against the rules? Hey, Wednesday, comics, stuff. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen that magic always comes with a price, that the future is rarely crystal clear, and that what's old can feel sometimes what is the newest in these books. Well, we're going to kick things off this week with God's Number 6, written by Jonathan Hickman with artwork by Valerio Schiti. Now, Valerio Schiti, in my personal opinion, is probably Marvel's best artist that they have in their bullpen right now. Everything that they do just looks gorgeous. The line work is lush. Double page spreads just breathe, and they just like show the magnificence of the world that they're building. And not only that, but the pacing that they put on display here is it's crystal clear. You're never left guessing what's happening on a page here, which you would think should be the status quo, but unfortunately isn't that much all that much in today's world of comic books. The best part about this book, though, is that we're finally seeing the characters that have been developed over the last 5 issues start to interact with the beings that command the Marvel universe, the manifestations of things like eternity and death and entropy, and we're starting to see that there's an end game at play here, very figuratively and literally, actually, because with this being issue 6, the series is set to end with issue number 8. So I think we're starting to actually get the gears turning, and we're going to see what our end game is going to look like. Now, that end game is kind of equal parts exciting and depressing because now that the gears are finally turning, now that we can see something that's coming, it's fantastic. I've been kind of, it took us maybe 4 issues to get a mission statement on this book, and now that we know what that is, and now that we see the interactions between the characters that we've come to know and these beings, I want to see more of that. So it's extraordinarily exciting. It's depressing because I can already tell from this issue alone, I'm going to want more of it. So with that being said, it's a mixed bag here. I want to see more. It's a great issue, but at the same time, it's leaving me a little bit depressed because there's definitely going to be a lingering effect that's left over with this issue, and I think the next issues coming up here. But with that being said, God's Number 6. What did you think? All right, let's talk about Miles Morales Spider-Man number 18, written by Cody Ziegler with artwork by Federico Vincentini, Luciano Vicino, David Marquez, and Sarah Pacelli. This is a tough one, guys. I got to just be completely honest with you. This is billed as a milestone issue. This was supposed to be the 300th, I believe, issue of Miles Morales, and we know that Marvel loves to do their legacy numbering. Nothing about this issue feels milestone. It's refreshing that this is not a tie-in issue because it's Miles Morales Spider-Man has been bogged down with, I believe, 4 tie-in events at this point, with gang war that had come up. I believe that there was another vampire specific event that it was tied into. It's really bogged down the story arc and where we're developing things and going. Now, I mean, I'm happy to say that this issue does pick up on the threads that were left previous to any kind of tie-in issue. So we're seeing some character development, but by issue 18, I would have expected this stuff to be wrapped up by issue 12, maybe even issue 10, the first story arc, to be completely honest. Um, the other thing that's really kind of setting me back on this issue is that we have some fantastic, talented artists on this book. Some of them that crafted the earliest stories of Miles Morales with Sarah Pacelli and David Marquez. And I would be hard pressed to tell you who drew what in this issue. It felt muddy, it felt rushed, and it didn't live up to the quality that I would expect from a milestone issue. It doesn't live up to the expectation I have for a normal issue. It was a huge letdown, art-wise. The story was okay. Like I said, I like seeing the character progression, especially seeing things with Matt Gargan, the Scorpion. I think that his arc has arguably been the best thing that's happened out of this book, but is it too little too late? I don't know. I'm gonna stick with the book. I still find that there's a lot of entertaining qualities about it, But Miles Morales, Spider-Man number 18, let me know your thoughts. All right, next up we have Detective Comics 1083, written by Ram V with artwork by Riccardo Federici and Stefano Raphael. Now, the first thing that jumps out at me in this book is Riccardo Federici's artwork. It is lush, it's fantastic. I've seen his work previously on the book Last Gods, and it is just it's like something that's taken directly out of like a fantasy novel. If you close your eyes and you imagine a fantasy world, it's probably going to be his artwork that pops into your head first and foremost. The downside, though, is that the colors by Lee Lowridge, they feel a little bit, I won't say muddy, but they feel a little bit dull and diluted. Nothing is pops, nothing is vibrant, and it doesn't necessarily call for it, but it's muted enough that it almost takes you out of the story a little bit, and it makes the page turn over and over a little bit less exciting than what it could be. Now, it is kind of cool because we're kind of setting up the end game of Ram V's run and Detective Comics, and we see that Bruce has finally kind of gotten past the Asmir's hold of him. He's kind of coming out of this dream state. So we're seeing that there's going to be an end game that's being played out here. We're kind of seeing the end of the poetic nature of what's happening with Bruce and his journey through madness and his journey through darkness back to the light. Um, but we're kind of stuck in this little middle ground where the journey of that part, specifically with this issue, felt a little bit more stretched out than it needed to be. That being said, it does set us up for the future conflict that we're going to see within the next two issues as Rom wraps things up, and it really puts Bruce in an interesting place now that he's kind of not only gotten through the drug induced hallucination and, quote unquote death that he had to deal with, but it's also set up Bruce to be a more confident character moving forward as he's shed a lot of things that maybe had held him back previously, and maybe some of the preconceived notions that we've come to know about Bruce. And it sets him up to be a stronger character moving forward. So I'm excited to see how this is going to wrap up. But Detective Comics 1083, let me know your thoughts. All right, it's time. Let's talk about my absolute favorite character for a little bit here. Let's dive into Daredevil number 7, written by Saladin Ahmed with artwork by Aaron Cooter. First and foremost, man, that's the most exciting part of this. Artwork by Aaron Cooter. He's on an issue and he's drawing it from start to finish. When he's doing that, this book soars. I've seen his artwork previously on books like Thor when Donny Cates was writing it, and I gotta say I questioned it a little bit. It kind of felt a little bit outside of the norm, a little bit um, more cartoony than I would anticipate from a Marvel comic. But I gotta say he has leveled up when it comes to his Daredevil work. Um, the spreads that he puts on these, the action shots, and this issue specifically where it's predominantly Wolverine fighting Daredevil. Oh my gosh, like he knows how to craft and choreograph an action scene. He knows how to keep the action flowing and he knows how to keep you interested. The line work is crisp, it's bold, it never lets you down. The cross hatching is fantastic. He brings the shadows in, he brings all the light work in that you would anticipate, and it just really makes this a better book than it would be without his artwork on there. Now, Ahmed's writing, it seems so reminiscent of what we had seen back in the 80s with Ann Nesenti. Matt Murdock is no longer the lawyer that we had known him to be. Coming out of the previous arc by Chip Zdarsky, we saw that he's now a priest, right? He's working in the community. He's a man of the community, and it feels so in line to what he was doing back in the 80s when Nesenti was writing it. He was working for soup kitchens, right? He was a man amongst the people, and it's very much in vein with that, and it's kind of refreshing. Every once in a while we got to get out of the norm of what we know these characters to be. We're always going to come back and cycle back to their true form, right, and put the toys back in the toy chest. But right now I think it's okay for him to be playing with those. It's exciting, it's new, and it's keeping everything fresh. The end of this issue really sets up something I think is going to be fun because we have the return of a character that we haven't seen since issue 1, and I am absolutely stoked to see their interactions. Like, we need to see them have a conversation here first and foremost, and I'm ready for that to happen within issue 8. With that being said, Daredevil number 7, let me know your thoughts. Okay, let's talk about something that totally doesn't divide comic book fans and everyone's excited for the Krakoan Age of X-Men. We're going to hit up Rise of the Powers of 10, number 3, written by Kieran Gillen with artwork by R.B. Silva. I'll kind of just jump in and say I think Gillen has done work that's been up to the same standard that Hickman had set when he first kicked off the Krakoan Age of X-Men. I know that that's going to be something that we don't see eye to eye on 100% of the time, but the things that he's done and where he's taken that story has just been it's been a master class of taking the baton and running with it. We've seen a lot of the storylines and a lot of the arcs and the writers kind of just fumble around and not really tell anything that's enduring, anything that's exciting with these characters. Gillen, no man, he is taking the ball and running with it. He has done a fantastic job of setting up the true villains of the Krakoan age. He's done a fantastic job of developing the characters and making them interesting and taking sometimes the tired tropes of X-Men, the time travel aspects, the Phoenix aspects, and some of the character arcs that we've come to know and love about characters. And we've seen him be able to twist them on their head, make them entertaining and new, and really kind of just shine a light on the best qualities of what an X-Men book can be. Now, RB Silva, we've known him from previous books, and he was on the Powers of 10 previously. He was one of the architects of this new age. Seeing him come back and kind of put an end cap on this part has been it's just been wonderful, right? He echoes back to some of the work that he had done previously, some of the work that Pepe Larraz had done previously, and it's a cool juxtaposition to what we had seen. We've seen a lot of Moira's previous 9 lives here, but now we're kind of jumping back into some of those lives and we're seeing interactions from characters that shouldn't be interacting at the time periods that they are right now. We're seeing the color work, mimic what we had seen in some of the other iconic shots from those 2 previous books, The House of X and Powers of 10. And it's really setting up for a finale that I think is going to be satisfying if you've been along for the ride. And I know that's kind of few and far between of us nowadays, but I got to say, this has been satisfying, and I'm definitely going to be sticking around until this finishes up here. So, Rise of the Powers of 10, number 3. Please let me know your thoughts. Well, we started the big 2 with the Jonathan Hickman book, so it's only fitting that we end the big 2. So let's talk about Ultimate Spider-Man number 3, written by Jonathan Hickman with artwork by Marco Cacchetto. Now, this book just feels right. There's no better way that I can put it. It just feels right. It's witty, it's charming, it never feels bogged down by anything, whether it be narration or continuity. It's just free flowing. And I didn't think Hickman had it in him, to be honest with you. I've never associated him with being a person who I thought could really write charming, witty dialogue without associating things that we kind of come to know from Hickman, scientific stuff, big narration, God forbid, the data pages. This is none of that. This is just 100% charm page over page, and I'm here for it 100%. Now, the thing that helps all of that is the artwork by Marco Cacchetto. If I said earlier that Valerio Schiti is probably Marvel's best artist right now, I think that Marco Cacchetto is probably the 1B to Sheedy's 1A in that bullpen. But they're totally different artists, where Sheedy is clean and precise. Cacchetto is gritty and grimy, and he takes imperfections and makes them perfect. It's almost like a Frank Miller quote that I know from earlier days, where he talks about, I never want pretty, but I always want beauty. Kaketo seeks out the beauty in the artwork, and it just shows page over page with all of his character work and his design. Some of the new costumes that are designed for some of the characters that show up, they're new and they're bold, but you can tell that they're inspired by by earlier works and sometimes even work outside of the 616 or even the Ultimate Universe of X-Men in the comics itself. Again, it just like the writing, it's just refreshing and it's a fantastic look at at this world that we're still kind of learning about. The other thing is that it's kind of nice seeing that Peter Parker's journey in this has almost taken on an episodic nature. We're kind of getting bits and pieces throughout each issue that we've been presented so far. But Peter's journey hasn't really been the story arc per se. It's been spoon feeding us bits and pieces, and I think that's the better approach, to be completely honest with you, because the overall arcing story is really coming from Ben and Jonah and what they're going to be doing with this new media conglomerate that they're going to be putting together, and how that juxtaposes from their previous work at the Daily Bugle and kind of what we know historically from the Daily Bugle and Jonah's time there at the 616. So it's going to take time, but I can see those two things coming head to head and maybe flipping to where Jonah and Ben's story becomes the A arc as we see Peter become more comfortable with his Spider-Man persona. But I'm ready for it. I'm here for it. Ultimate Spider-Man #3 could have been a top comic pick of the week. Could have been one of the many that I could choose. But I'm curious. What do you think? Let me know. Diving into the indies, we're going to start with Masterpiece #4, written by Brian Michael Bendis with artwork by Alex Maleev. It seems to be that the comics I pulled this week seem to have just a litany of Spider-Man adjacent people associated with it, and I'm cool with that. The first thing that I would think of when I see this issue is that Maleev's artwork doesn't have the grime that I kind of associated with him in previous things that he had worked on, specifically Daredevil, but the quality of his artwork still shines and sings. The pacing is there, and when it comes to laying out a scene, such as the action scenes that are in this issue, it is just absolutely flawless. You feel the weight of every punch, and you feel the flow of energy as everything is moving around each panel here. So it's really probably the best aspect of this issue. Now, some of the not so great aspects of this issue really come from some of the things that we've kind of known Bendis to do, which is, it's even got its own name, which is Bendis speak. The dialogue in this feels like a man in his 50s writing for a teenager. And it really just, it kind of oozes that feeling, and it doesn't feel right. It feels fake and it feels wrong. And I feel bad even saying that, because I hold Bendis in a high regard. And to see this end product being what we're given, ah, it makes this issue really, really hard to get through. It's a bit of a struggle, and I know that he can do something that's going to be better than this. With that being said, it's still a worthwhile issue. It's just that there's a lot of dialogue issues, a lot of pacing issues, and knowing that this is issue 4 and we're going to be wrapping up in 2 issues, man, he has a lot of heavy lifting to do to really make this a worthwhile ending, considering that we've been putting along this entire time and there's been little to nothing that's been going on here besides conversations behind the scenes. I'm ready for some big action. I'm ready for the end game. I just don't know if he's going to be able to deliver on it. But Masterpiece #4, did you pick it up? What are your thoughts? Next up on the docket, we have The Six Fingers #2, written by Dan Waters with artwork by Sumit Kumar. Now, Dan Waters is writing the companion piece to The One Hand with Ram V, and they're really doing a good job kind of juggling and going back and forth between these issues, telling a compelling story. But I have to say that this one felt a little bit muddy, as the timing between what's going on between the One Hand issue 2 and the Six Fingers issue 2 doesn't quite line up as cleanly as I expected them to. I was more looking for a continuation as opposed to a retelling of what had previously happened through the lens of another character. We didn't really need a lot of the details that were presented here. It didn't show us anything new and exciting. We already knew about the mutations. We already knew that our character was truly going through with the murders that are being investigated by our protagonist in The One Hand. The one thing that was developed here is a little bit of the dreams and the hallucinations that might have been coming through and affecting the character, and we don't quite know if they're real or if they're something that is coming by way of the medication that he's on. So it's delivering a little bit new mystery here, and I appreciate that there's more question marks that are delivered as answers keep getting thrown at us. But this issue just felt a little bit lopsided. I wanted a little bit more new than old. But with that being said, I'm still along for the ride. I'm curious, the Six Fingers, are you reading it? We have another pick of the week contender here with Newburn issue 16, the finale of Newburn, written by Chip Zdarsky with artwork by Jacob Phillips. The finale flash forwards, and we kind of see our protagonist, or one of our protagonists, Emily, a little bit further into the future here, and it's showing her as a capable, calculated successor to Easton Newburn's role. We've seen that she's fully, taken over his duties. She's running the families and making sure that there's peace amongst all the mafia families within the city, and that she's kind of holding crime at bay the best that she can in the same methods that Newburn had previously used. Um, Chip tends to craft his finales as very much an epilogue to the character growth that we've seen in the books, as opposed to an epilogue for story beats. For all intents and purposes, this story ended with the last issue. We're not delivered anything new and exciting. We're really just kind of seeing these characters, in their new roles, in their new lives, delivering the things that we would expect them to, right? It's kind of just it's a bow on top of the present here, but the present was already given to us in the last issue. With that being said, though, Jacob Phillips, he deserves an award all to himself. We kind of talk about writer artists a lot these days, like the Daniel Warren Johnsons. But let's give kudos where kudos is due. Phillips is doing the pencils, the inks, the layouts, the colors, and the lettering on this. It's basically almost a one-man show. If he ever becomes a writer, good lord, I don't know how he's going to be stopped here. Um, Everything is just fantastic. I mean, you can tell that this is a person that's grown up through comics, right? With his father being Sean Phillips. And dare I say, he might have eclipsed his own father. I don't know what else to say. He is just one of the top creators, not even just artists, but creators in this industry. And more people need to take notice. I'm excited to see what they work on next together. I'm excited to see what they work on individually. With that being said, Newborn 16, the finale. What did you think? And finally, with our top comic of the week, I'm going with Conan number 9, written by Jim Zub, with artwork by Roberto De La Torre. This is just a fun book. This is just, it just harkens back to a different time in comics, a different age. And it's kind of funny because I look back and I remember seeing these as a child and thinking how boring, how dull a comic. And now that I'm much older, I appreciate them so much more. With the old aspect of this book, one of the things that is just so refreshing is seeing Roberto De La Torre back on art duties. He brings a quality to this book that is very much akin to the old comics, the old periodicals when John Buscema was on art duties. It's been said, ad nauseum at this point, but it just sings. It just feels right in a Conan book, and I don't think that there's a better artist you can have delivering these type of stories. Now, each page is just like packed to the brim with exposition, with narration boxes, with dialogue. But I don't say that to say that the book is overly verbose. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's a fun adventure and it feels of its time. Without that in the book, I think it might kind of just topple over. I feel like it would feel like something that it's not. So, with that being said, Conan just again it feels right. It brings all the old school mentalities through, but also through a new school lens, right? With new approaches, new story ideas that are just really compelling and really fantastic. And one of the new aspects that we're seeing is a character that, if you know Conan, you probably already love, reintroduced within this arc and within this line at Titan Comics. That I'm really, really excited to see how they explore that further. So the story, it just feels fresh, it feels alive, nothing feels bogged down, even though it very well could do that. It's walking the tightrope just right, and for those reasons, it made my top comic of the week. So that's what I have for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read? What were your thoughts? What is your pick of the week? Be part of the panel, leave me a comment down below, and if you found value from this video, like and subscribe. I'll talk to you later. Have a great week.